Joining us from Epic is Dr. Daniel from EAC. Daniel has over 30 years of experience working in IT and is a director of strategy for Epic. We also have Stuart Scanlon, who has over 20 years of experience in IT and is the managing director of Epicor in South Africa. I will now hand over to Daniel and Stuart to talk about the Absa and Epicor partnership. Oh no! What? I think we've got some interference. Daniel, Stuart, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Cool. Can you see us?
We most definitely can.
Yeah. Can you see us?
You may have been replaced by these two gentlemen, though.
Say again.
Stuart and Daniel, can you please proceed? We can hear you.
Cool. Stuart, tell me again why we're wearing balaclavas?
Well, I mean, Daniel, so I think, well, firstly, it's the law. You need to be wearing a mask in terms of COVID, in terms of the serious situation that we find ourselves in globally. But the reality of the situation is not all criminals wear a mask.
And legally they need to.
And they legally do. And I think, you know, one of the challenges is we are not always sure who we're actually inviting into our organizations, etc. You know, and not just in organizations, some of us are connecting up from home, etc. So, and, you know, I think just effectively those that know us know that, you know, we work really seriously, but we always like to have a bit of fun in everything that we do. I mean, that's it's an important thing, especially when things get a bit serious. You can't take things, you know, you've got to try and look at the lighter side as well.
There's also a darker side, and today there's a discussion about fraud, which is quite close to home for us. In fact, I seem to remember hearing in the beginning Sivan mentioning that you have over 20 years IT experience. So you still got scammed?
So it's something we happened to us about 18 months ago, and I'm struggling to live it down to this day. You know, as an organization, we're out there tendering for new work all the time, and you know, we got the phone call early afternoon with the great news that we'd won this tender through the adjudication organization that had done it. And you know, we proceeded to obviously fire off a bottle of champagne and celebrate. And we were expecting the next steps from the company. And just ironically, the next afternoon at about 12 o'clock, received an email with the hyperlink in the email to download the tender award documents. And you know, what would you do? You're expecting the order, you click on the hyperlink, but about 30 seconds later, I'd quickly realized something didn't feel right about this message that I've got to enter my email and password, you know, which you naturally just did. So I very quickly jumped on the phone, turned the computer off the network and phoned our administrator and had them, you know, kick me off all administrative access to get off 365 and effectively fixed the situation. But, you know, it was just so well planned and executed, and, you know, a very reputable large organization had, you know, sent out the email. Why would you not trust it? And it linked back into the story was magnificent. You know, we got caught. Well, I personally got caught as an organization. You know, I think, you know, we've seen similar kind of messages coming from SARS.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think a lot of people have had the one where someone from your accounts department phones you or calls your extension and says that they got a call from SARS that said that they refunded the wrong account and could you please return the money, and here are the banking details. And you know, everyone is all too quick to try and solve things when it comes to SARS. And they're like, whoa, let's just check. That doesn't look like a verified bank account. And also, where's the proof that they're, the money really did get transferred and it wasn't just a check that's about to bounce? But there's lots of stories, and we all have those. And yeah, as director of strategy, part of my role is looking at trends and how they affect our business and our customers. And one of the things that keeps coming up is fraud, especially now with COVID and the lockdown and a lot of people working from home. Some over VPN, some worse. There's currently a lot more risk in transacting. And we know that ERP vendors try to secure their systems as far as possible. And we know that banks try to secure their systems as far as possible. But somewhere in between the two, there's still human involvement. And that's why we've embarked on this project with Absa to have a look at how we can reduce risk and improve efficiency at the boundary between ERP and banking. And so with that, we're going to pass back to Sivan and let him take us through some of the detail.
Thanks, Sivan.
Thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Daniel. That just goes to show that even for old foxes can be tricked. Excellent. Thank you for the introduction. I believe we're going to go to a quick poll, which you can now answer in your chat box. It should come up now. Please give us a second. Great. So the poll that we have is, has your business experienced fraud in the past 5 years? And you can select one of the 4 options that we have available here. Never, in the last 12 months, in the last 24 months, or more than 24 months. Please select one of the options, and we will give you the answers in a little bit. Great, thank you for answering that. We will provide you with the answers in a short bit. Off the back of that great story from Stuart and Daniel, we presented with quite an interesting scenario across the globe, and that is COVID-19. Definitely a word that we've heard umpteen times over the past couple of months, and has become essentially a state of life for all of us in South Africa, if not the globe. One of the interesting things that this particular scenario presents is, does COVID-19 present us with a backdoor to increased fraud risk? Fraud typically occurs when 3 components align: opportunity, pressure, and rationalization. Social disarray and uncertainty has created opportunity that fraudsters are exploiting. Remote working presents deviations from our normal checks and controls and a greater opportunity for fraud. As many of us know, working from home, the rule book has been thrown out. Many of us are working under lax circumstances, and we often forget the seriousness of the tasks that we are presented with. The second factor is that business and financial uncertainty has created pressure, which has created heightened risk for fraudulent activity. Many employees are in particularly dire circumstances, having to support extended family members and often having very short cash flow over the short term and over the particular COVID period that is yet to be defined as when we're actually going to end this. The third point is uncertainty. Uncertainty has created a rationalization for fraudulent, deviant behavior. Many people rationalize their behavior by saying, well, it's an entirely new set of circumstances that we're in. Anything goes. It's survival of the fittest. Or I'm smart for doing this because I'm actually providing for myself and my family during a particularly tough time. Let's have a look at some of scenarios that can actually affect your company during this particular time that we work from home. The first one that we're going to look at is a business email compromise. And this may ring true from what we heard earlier from Stuart and Daniel. Some scammer poses a company payment that you need to make to them. They would pose as a contractor, a supplier, or in some cases, even a senior manager in your organization, requesting for an immediate payment of an invoice. How can we mitigate something like this? Well, the first thing is that we need to be vigilant. We need to remind the employees that you have to verify an invoice before paying it. One of the systems that we have at Absa is an account verification service that allows for the verification of supplier invoice details. Once an invoice has been verified, an employee should also call and check with the person that has provided it to ring that indeed the details they have been provided with are true. We also need to look at implementing a process that can assist your employees to know what they have to do when working remotely. Often a lot of the processes that you have within your business may be specific to being at the office and being in a particular scenario. All of these things need to be spelled out clearly for your employees that are working during the lockdown. The second scenario that we're looking at is the submitting of duplicate invoices for work performed or work not done, or which has not been properly checked or verified. In order to mitigate this, you can make sure that all of your invoices are matched against supplier details and that all goods and services have actually been received before payment is approved. Again, a process should be implemented to make sure that your employees have enough time to process this. During this remote working and times of COVID-19, often people use pressure to say that they have an urgent payment and it needs to be done due to cash flow or whatever scenario arising from COVID-19. I've just got news that our poll has closed. 21% of you have voted, and we'd again please like to remind you that you can vote. We are going to have 2 more polls throughout the presentation, and you can participate. Let's look at some of the challenges that are facing South African business today and how your business operation has actually been affected by fraud and inefficient processes. Fraud has a substantial impact on financial performance and supplier experience, as well as confidence in your business. Inefficiencies can waste nearly a third of the time of your employees. Let's look at some statistics that we've got from a global crime and fraud survey that was performed in South Africa. Up to 77% of South African organizations have been victims of economic crime and fraud in the past 2 years. That's an astounding figure. It's almost a case of not if it will affect me, but when and how I can mitigate it. 67% of losses that are due directly to fraud could actually reach over 20 million rands per annum. Almost half of fraud has been perpetrated by internal employees with a tenure of more than 10 years. These are often key employees that you have, people in small businesses that may have been with you from the very beginning and have a certain level of trust in your business. Almost half the fraud that has been perpetrated are typically done by these kinds of employees. Just because you have a certain loyalty or a track record with a particular employee does not mean that you are invulnerable to fraud. 22% of accounting fraud has actually been done by senior management. That's almost a quarter of all fraud incidents attributed to senior employees in your business, directors, executives, or even partners. Just because somebody is very senior or well off and entitled in your business does not necessarily make them invulnerable to the pressures and the opportunities that may be presented to commit fraud. Almost 20% of organizations have had to spend a significant amount more than the amount of fraud that actually occurred. Typically, when a fraud occurs in your organization, you would want to know where your weaknesses are and how it actually occurred. Typically, you would use an investigation or a forensic investigation company, and these services are often very, very expensive, and you may end up paying far more in fees to investigate than what you actually lost in the fraud. Let's have a look at some of how inefficiencies in your business can waste some of your employees' time. 76 days out of a year are annually lost due to inefficient processes and administrative tasks. How many times have you had to scan, sign, and email something over and over again to a supplier, an administrator, or even a banker? All of that time could be spent doing something far more proactive and adding value to your business. 70% of all the total finance costs that you actually spend on operations relate to internal processes, processes that must be followed and processes that often take more than one person to complete. Over a quarter of South African organizations' employee days are spent on avoidable administrative tasks. This is time that could be spent elsewhere, far more productively than simply just performing things that are often repetitive and simply done for the sake of not having a far more efficient way of doing them. 20% of a total finance operations costs relate to bank fees. This is a really important one, and bank fees in any organization often typically is one of the larger line items and should be scrutinized with far more carefully eyed and looked at a very careful way in terms of how can you use your banking facilities in a much more experienced way. So I think we've just got our response from the poll that we've done at the beginning. And just to remind you, the question was, has your business experienced fraud? The answers were 50% say never, 25% of the people say yes, they have experienced this in the last 12 months, and 25% say that more than 24 months have taken occurrence since they have last experienced fraud. So even in amongst our little group here in this call, almost a quarter of you have experienced fraud in your business at some point during the past year. That's an astounding figure. I believe we have another poll. And this poll is, has fraud and mitigation steps for fraud been an agenda item in your management or board meetings? Please select one of the three below options. Yes, fraud is a prominent topic. Yes, but it is an intermittent topic. Or no, it has never really been a consideration for your business. I'll give you a moment to answer some of these questions. Thanks. Thanks. We'll give you the answers of that poll later on in our presentation. I'd now like to take you through the traditional payments process that some organizations use. This is quite a generic process and may not fit your business exactly. However, I think the steps are pretty much constant over most administration departments. Typically, your payments processes in businesses are manual, admin intensive, and exposes your business to financial fraud. This results from a disconnect between the line of business systems that you use and your banking channels. They often exist on separate computers in separate areas and may even be operated by separate people. Let's have a look at a typical payment that would affect your business. So for example, if you look at step 1 in the middle left-hand corner, we've got your administration department where you would have a new supplier that has been loaded into your business system. Typically, your admin clerk would then log on to their line of business system and would raise a purchase order, would then receive the supplier invoice, capture and approve that supplier invoice, prepare a payment file, which is often in the format of an Excel, CSV, or it could even be as low tech as a text file. That file is then saved onto a C drive, onto a thumb drive, and thereafter the payment clerk has to move on to the next step in the payments process, which is the online banking part of it. They would have to log on to the online banking system, upload and capture those payment systems to their supplier list or global beneficiary list on their online banking system. They would then have to submit that for approval. Whoever is authorized within your business, and it's usually would be a senior employee, would have to then also log on to that online banking system and approve it. The payment clerk would then have to download that proof of payment and then email it to the beneficiary or the creditor that they were trying to pay. There's then another part of this process. Your accounting clerk would then have to capture those payment details, update your cash book, and again, probably attach that proof of payment so that they have a record of it for future purposes. If we look at this process, it is quite onerous. There are several steps. There's 2 different systems and there's 2 different areas. It's quite an onerous process that can clearly be very, very inefficient. If we look at the red dots here, we have your payments processes that can actually be far more efficient. And if we look at your gray dots, we have areas or opportunities that can be prone to fraud, risk, errors. Let's have a look at the red dots. So the red dots are all the way from 1 to 15, barring a few of them. You can see that it's quite a lot of different areas and different types of operations that they encompass, but they are long, repetitive, they have different systems, they have different stages, there may be different computers involved, and again, you've got 2 separate systems here, one being your line of business system and the other being your online banking. If we were to look at the gray areas of steps number 7, 8, and 10, these are the areas that are prime for fraud risk and also for payment capture errors. The use of multiple systems for capturing your line of business and your online banking system and keeping that file between 2 different computers perhaps creates a prime opportunity for fraud risk. An opportunity to create or alter those transactions actually exists all the way from step 3 all the way right up to step 8. So that's 4 or 5 different points in this process that those payment details can actually be altered, as your payment file is only approved right at the end of the process. So again, you can see that this is quite a very leaky process. There's a lot of things that can go wrong here, which brings us to why we've experienced this this whole fraud and risk process. What can we actually do as a business owner to combat that? And Daniel and Stuart spoke to you earlier about the partnership, and this is really what we wanted to speak to you about today. The Absa and Epicor partnership has provided us with a very unique situation. We have managed to combine your ERP system, your Epic ERP system, with our online banking system, giving you one platform that you are able to transact on, and that you are able to upload all of your beneficiaries and then able to approve all those payments ultimately at the end on your online banking system. Let's go through it. Over here, we've got 3 different areas. We've got your admin clerk, and we've got, again, your line of business system and your online banking profile. Immediately, we can see that this picture is far more organized and has far less steps than the previous one that I showed you. We can also notice that there are no gray dots here, meaning that there haven't been any opportunities in this payment process for fraud and risk errors. Let's look at the steps. Step 1, we would load the supplier onto the line of business system, onto Epic. And that would then, we would raise a purchase order. Your admin clerk would then receive the supplier invoice. They would capture and approve that supplier invoice. They would prepare the payment file. And in step 6, and this is a really important one, if you recall, we spoke earlier about how we can swap payment information. The step 6 shows that you can verify your supplier's account details directly on your line of business system. So you can check immediately whether the invoice is actually valid, that the name corresponds to the person that you are trying to pay, and that all those details are correct. Once that has been done, that payment is then uploaded onto your online banking channel, where only the payment approver needs to log on and to approve it. Again, this may be someone typically senior in your payment area, or your CFO, or your treasurer. And this process, which is only 7 steps long compared to the previous one, which was far more onerous, addresses your payment process inefficiencies. There's a reduction in the payments process firstly, so it's far quicker. There's less opportunity for error. The automation eliminates what we call a swivel chair and getting from one system onto the other, taking in account details from a piece of paper and one system and transferring it over and typing it into another. And this gives you one end-to-end payment processing engine. This also gives you a reduction in the number of resources and time assigned to payments. This would ultimately take you around 2/3 to almost half the time to process, as you don't have that many steps involved. But the next important part is, how does this actually address fraud risk and errors? By integrating the two systems, we are actually eliminating payment process steps that are prone to alteration and the creation of fraudulent files. The beneficiary details that you're using are verified in your line of business system and are locked, which eliminates any possible alteration to the payment file further on. Payments can only be approved by the authorized personnel on our secure Absa banking platform. Integration also offers you an audit trail capability of details that are verified and transactions that are approved. So you would know exactly when and who has approved or has created or has amended a particular transaction. In terms of this particular product that we're going on, the point being is that we are going to develop this into a fully fledged banking system. The greater the amount of functionality we put onto this new transactional service, the less opportunity you're going to need to actually, and less dependence you're going to have on your online banking platform. Everything is going to be done in your ERP system, and you'd simply log onto your online banking platform and approve the transaction, and your payments will be made. I'd now like to go on to our last quiz. But before I do that, let me give you the results of our previous. You'll recall the previous question. We have, the previous question was directed at how prominent fraud risk is in your management meetings. Of the people that have responded, 43% has said yes, this is a prominent item in my management meetings. 29% have said yes, this is intermittent. And 30% of people, almost a third, has said that this is not an agenda item on any management meeting. Those are some sobering thoughts. Let's go to the next poll. Also, during this poll, I'd like to let you know that you can actually raise your hand if you have anything to add to the question or would like any clarification. We will then unmute your mic so that you can contribute if you would like to. I'll now give you a minute to respond to this poll. Would you like to have a follow-up conversation on how our solution can apply to your own environment? The two options are yes, that would be great, or no, we've already got this covered. Seeing as 30% of respondents have not included fraud as an agenda item in their management meetings, I would hope that the bulk of you respond, yes, that would be great. Thanks. We will show you these the answers to these questions in a little moment. This partnership between Epic and Absa has provided us with a unique opportunity, and moreover, you, dear client, as a unique early adopter, someone that we can absolutely give this process to and help you eliminate fraud risk and inefficiency in your business. We have a seamless onboarding and implementation process at Absa, and we are able to hook you up very, very quickly. The first thing we will have is a scoping session where we discuss your current payments process and your requirements. All of our solutions are tailored to your environment. You would then complete our forms where we provide key information to enable us to onboard you onto our channels. These include company details, account details, usernames, and channel limits. We would then onboard you to our Absa Business Integrator online channel, where it's a self-service onboarding where you would have an approver and authorizer within your business. Each user will receive a digital certificate for authentication purposes. We would then have our partners at Epicor come and update your Epicor software and provide you with a seamless integration to our Absa Bank products. Throughout all of this, we would provide you with service support from Absa and Epicor with a dedicated support team specific to your organization. Some key factors that you can adopt some key factors to consider as an early adopter. We have a dedicated team of highly specialized people that can address any issues you have or queries during onboarding and your payment processing period. You can opt out of the service at any time by providing notice to Absa and Epicor without any penalties. All of the applicable banking fees will be successfully charged for processed payments that you use. If you have any questions or would like to hear anything more, you're welcome to contact myself, Suvan from Absa, or Stuart from Epic. As mentioned, we will provide you with this presentation after we are done, and you will have copies of all of the information as well as the contact details. I'd now like to ask Stuart and Daniel to join me back for some questions and answers. If you could raise your hand and ask any, and we will unmute your mic. We will then take any questions during this time. Daniel and Stuart, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, we're ready for questions.
Hey, Sivan, thanks very much. That was a really nice session. Thanks.
So while we wait for questions, let me go through the results of our last poll. It was a very interesting result. It seems like our results were 50% yes, you would like to hear more about our solution, and a 50% no. We'll hope that you would change your mind after this. If you do, please email any of the contact people that I've provided you with, and we will get back to you. Are there any questions that we have? You're welcome to raise your hand and we will unmute your mic.
Sivan.
Hi.
Hey, Sivan, it's Stuart. It seems that some of our customers had a couple of challenges getting into the webinar, I suppose, with all the different formats of webinar sessions that have been had over the past couple of weeks due to COVID. You know, you can get onto Zoom or, you know, it seems Teams and all these different formats. People have struggled. But one of the good questions we had from a customer is this version specific? And the guys were talking about, so the message was, is this something that relates to just Epicor ERP or Epicor Scala? Or, you know, do you need to be on cloud or on premise? You know, what the different options are, etc. And, you know, I suppose the answer is no, we're trying to bring it to everybody because that's how we've built it. And that's been one of the areas that has taken us a couple of extra weeks just to get it to market, is that we are making it available to
all versions, all platforms in Epicor.
All versions and all platforms in Epicor. So every customer in South Africa, you know, as long as you have an Absa bank account, you can get value from the service. But on account verification, you don't need an Absa bank account. You can verify it through BankServe, and we can then validate all those details anyway. So that's non-bank specific, but obviously to do more advanced payments in our future phases and where we're going to, obviously that would then benefit if you had an Absa account and it was one of your key transactional accounts.
Sivan, do you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think, account verification is one of the prime tools that you can use to combat fraud in your business. But again, the most out of it, you do need the sophistication end of it, but and access to the payment part of it, right? Because if you're going to verify in one system and then use those details by typing into another, you're basically opening yourself up for fraud again. But again, that is an excellent bit of functionality, and again, that is not bank specific, and that can be used on the Epic system once the update is installed. Stuart, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. But obviously, the tight integration is with Absa. So to get all of the benefits, you have to have an Absa account, or you want to.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. And the update that Epic would provide our clients, what is the cost for that?
Well, I think, that's why I said it's just, it depends on which version and how far they go down the track on what they're doing, but it's built into your typical transactional costing, but there are additional services we're building in at a per transactional level in terms of doing account verification. So when you onboard a customer or update any banking or suppliers, additional details, we go through standard verification processes, and that's that's the area that customers and organizations spend the most amount of effort, because you go through it. But once you've got a customer on board, very few people actually take cognizance of updates to banking details, etc.
And it is one of the areas where we've seen fraud happen at customers before, where a client or one of our customers has the supplier loaded, and they have the banking details loaded, and they've been doing payments for a while. And then one of the accounts clerks gets an email that looks very formal from the supplier saying the next payment and they manage to find out how much that payment's for, and they say that payment we've changed banking details, please pay the amount into this account. And at least with this integration with Absa, we're able to check to see if the organization matches the banking details. So if you get this request, aside from other controls we can put in place, at least we can check to see if you're supposed to be paying, IBM or Lenovo, and all of a sudden the banking details change and the account name doesn't match Lenovo, and neither does the account registration or the company registration number, then that gives you the ability to pause and stop before paying potentially an enormous amount of money to the wrong person or company.
But Daniel, the other side of that, and thanks, but I think the other side of the equation is also, it's most ERP implementations across different systems that all include bank integration, and that's a normal thing to do because you want to download your bank statements and do I want to do an upload to the ERP system and quickly match, because that takes away hours of processing and just the validation. But where we're going to with this partnership is to bring that live integration. So if somebody says they've done a payment to you for a supply that's come in, how do you validate that in real time
before you release the goods?
Correct, because a proof of payment, no,
you can forge them.
It can be forged, and a lot of our customers have seen that. And it's a lot of organizations
can't actually verify them. There's no number on there that you can phone the bank and say, "Is this valid? Did I get the money?"
Absolutely. So it's absolutely correct. And that's what's made it really exciting for us to partner with Absa, is that you guys have been first to come to. We've done all the normal bank integration with the big banks, but Absa was the first bank to come to us and have a discussion and take it to the next level, and talking about, we need to, as John and some of the other people we've dealt with at Absa and yourselves have done, always talk about how do you improve the customer experience when it comes to banking. It's not a sexy process. I'm giving you my money every month. And how do you add value? And I think that was one of the things that we found quite exciting with our partnership. And just kudos to Sivan, yourself, John, the rest of the team that we've been dealing with throughout the past couple of months.
Very forward thinking, yeah.
Very forward thinking, and we're very impressed with the level of improvement that you guys are bringing to innovation to our customers, and we see a lot of value in it. So this is step one in many steps for us. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that this solution, truly offers value to our clients that is far more than merely the sum of its parts. I do believe we have a question from Simon coming through. Simon, are you there?
Yes, hi, Sivan. I think a question that we want to ask, looking at the polls, and the very first poll that we put out, with businesses experiencing fraud in the past 12 months. And I think something that's very relevant for organizations, around the world is this COVID-19. As Absa, are you seeing any trends currently with fraud with COVID-19? Are you finding any avenues where fraudsters are, almost penetrating businesses with increased online activity? Do you have any feedback, for everyone out there, based on what you guys are seeing?
I think you're 100% correct, Simon. During this COVID-19, I think all the way from the beginning of February till now, we have seen a very, very large uptick in fraud activity, particularly that have hit small and medium enterprises within Absa our client base. We have had an Absa fraud division that has been up and running for some time now, but we have declared those guys as essentially employees, and those are live, people. They're not a group of robots. They're there on hand, checking on transactions and helping clients that are experiencing fraud. And fraudsters have kept that team really, really busy over the past 3 months. So genuinely, there has been an uptick, and I think that fraudsters love chaos and they thrive in situations of chaos. And they are definitely taking advantage of businesses, particularly now. People may not be on site, and you may be short-staffed. You may have had to lay off certain people, and so you may have employees that aren't too au fait with current processes. And fraudsters take advantage of this because they use the fact that there's time pressure, there's cash flow problems, there's a supplier shipment that's waiting for you of hand sanitizers and gloves, etc., that you need to operate your business. And if you don't pay them, they're not going to release those goods. And often on the back of it, there's a fake invoice and a bank account that is ready to be cleaned out. And it's a really, really sobering scenario. It's unfortunately one more thing that we have as bankers and as business owners to contend with. Rest assured that Absa is doing everything in its power to combat that. But again, this is a two kind of situation. We need you and us to help each other to combat fraud. So be alert, be aware, make sure whoever has access to any of your banking channels are the correct people, and keep a very close eye on everything that's going on in the financial parts of your business. Thanks, Simon. Does that answer you?
Yes, thank you very much. And I think that's very relevant for a lot of people out there. I think a lot of us in business today don't really realize the risks that we're facing out there. And just thank you very much. I think a lot of the times, the more we speak about it and the more we get made aware of the situations around us, we as employees of organizations can then start looking out for this. And I think by taking notes and looking at things around us, we can then become a lot more active in the fight. So yeah, thank you very much. That definitely does help.
Excellent. Well, thank you to everybody that has joined us this afternoon. We will be circulating the presentation and the recording for today's session so that you can refer to it or pass it on to anyone else that didn't have a chance to join us. There are contact details in our presentation. You are welcome to contact myself or Stuart, and we will arrange a one-on-one with you where you can learn more about your business and how we can help you. Thank you to everybody. I will be ending the video webinar now.